Hello, hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Garrett Bake, your brother in arms, and welcome to another episode of The Tactical Businessman. Today we have, that's right, the specialist of all guests, my wife. We got Melissa on the show again. She actually hasn't been here on quite a few episodes, and it's not because I didn't want her to be here. She was too busy for me.
I have been busy.
She has been busy, but not too busy for me. So she was asking me right before we came on, like, what are we going to talk about? I was like, I don't know. What do you want to talk about? She's like, I don't know. I was like, do you want to talk about sex? And I got the look. So we may talk about sex, but that's not going to be the center point of our conversation today. We're actually going to talk about relationships, because what we've noticed over the last year or so, year and a half, more, is how many men and women have been approaching us, talking or asking questions, I should say, about relationships. Like, how do you make a relationship work? That's a very, very dynamic question. It's very complicated. So we're not going to get into how to make your relationship work. We're simply going to talk about our relationship and our experience. I was actually Googling online because I was trying to find, like, okay, what are the most commonly asked questions in an unhappy marriage? And actually what I found was not the 5 most questions that are asked from an unhappy couple, but the 5 questions that should be asked when you're unhappy, which leads to something very interesting, right? And that's, well, something's not working. How is it that we actually figure out what's not working and then how to make it work? If you've been listening to this podcast for any period of time, you know that I'm all about solutions, not just talking about problems. Everybody in the world wants to talk about their problems. If you don't believe me, go to Oprah or any of those other shows. We actually not only talk about the problems, but we talk about the practical solutions. But I want to have you to have the opportunity to hear it not only from my mouth, but also from my wife. She's much cuter than I am. So here we go. Now, listen, if this is your first time listening to my wife, you got to go back and listen to the first 2 episodes. We talk about our relationship. We talk about where we were, and they're very powerful episodes. So go back and listen to those. But for today, we're going to answer 5 questions. And the title of this is basically, are you unhappy with your marriage? So here's the 5 questions that you need to ask. And then we're going to follow those 5 questions up with action items. And then intermingle that with our relationship, right? So we're going to talk about our story, but centered around these 5 questions. So I'm going to start with Melissa, right? I'm going to ask the question and then let her kind of start from there. If you think that you're in an unhappy relationship, oh, and by the way, men, yes, that's right, men, when you're listening to these questions, these are the questions that you should be asking yourself. Why? Because an unhappy marriage leads to a broken business, leads to a burned down business, leads to a business that is unsuccessful. 100%.
Yep.
So then a happy marriage leads to a happy business. It's really that simple. When you think about your life, we always talk about this foundation, right? We're always trying to build this solid foundation. Well, the solid foundation is built on your relationship with your body, your relationship with God or this higher power, your relationship with your family, and those 3 are the foundation for a powerful and profitable business. That's it. That's the way it works. So if you're a businessman, listen up. We're going to talk about this because I know you're experiencing these things right now. So question number 1. Things aren't working right now, right? Things aren't working in your marriage. So this is the first question that you need to ask, and that is, why do I feel unhappy? So Melissa, when we were going through the struggles that we went through, which was pretty much the first 15 or so years of our relationship, or so it seemed, was there any time that you actually asked yourself this question?
It would have to be a yes. And it would definitely be a combination of what we were doing together and where I was as a housewife. So when I look at us together, there was like 0 spark in our marriage. I barely even saw you. Like when I look at your schedule, I think about your schedule, our bed was never made. because I was sleeping in at night and he was sleeping in at day. I ran everything. I did everything with the kids. I did all the groceries. I did everything. And you just came in and you would leave.
So what did that lead to? And businessmen, I want you to hear this because this is really important. So what did that lead to? Like us being on opposite schedules, not being on the same page. Like what did that lead to?
There was zero connection. Like we were not living a married life. It was just that simple. No married life. I even vacationed with the kids alone. So I literally didn't have a spouse. Like he contributed financially and that's it.
So what she basically had is a roommate with a ring. That's what I'd become. Because I'd put business first. I'd put work first. I'd put making money first. Now, I told myself in my mind that making money was going to make me happy. It was going to provide things for my wife. It was going to provide things for my kids. And to a certain degree, that was true. But the problem is that I was doing it so much that it was driving a wedge between us. So I'd come home or I'd be at home and I'd want to engage with my wife, engage with my kids. What do you think they would rather do?
Not engage with you.
Anything other than engage with me. Why? Because all of a sudden I just show up and pretend like I'd been there the whole time.
There
right?
was no relationship. You had no relationship with me or the kids.
There was zero relationship. So I just show up and be like, the fact that I'm a man, the fact that I'm the husband, the fact that I'm the father, I can just show up and everything's going to be good. And it wasn't. So I try and, gentlemen, as you know, cuddle, right? I try and hit on my wife and I'd basically get the cold shoulder. And then I'd get pissed off because I got the cold shoulder. So the real question here is, why do I feel unhappy? I want you to consider this. Consider that answering this question, when you first start to answer this question, it's not going to be based on fact or reality. It's going to be based on your feelings, on emotion, on one of these four primary feelings, right? Happiness, sadness, anger, or fear. It's going to be one of these. And most of the time, if you're in an unhappy relationship, it's sadness and it's anger.
Yeah. There was definitely a lot of that there between me and him.
So talk about when the fact of me not being there became so overwhelming. Like, what kind of feelings were going on inside?
So that's where there was anger. I'm like, I need help on some days. And there was 0 point of asking you because I wouldn't get that help. Or you would say, oh, I'll be home at this time. And that time came. And another hour, another 2 hours. Every time you gave me a time, it was at least 4 or 5 hours later that you would show up. So I couldn't even count on you for something simple as getting home on time.
Couldn't even count on you. Does this sound familiar? Because it should. If you've been married for any period of time and you've started working more and more, I guarantee you this is what your wife is feeling right now. Couldn't count on you. So we start to feel these emotions inside, right? And as men, the women feel what? They feel disconnected, right? They feel sadness. It leads to anger. And then what does that lead to for us? Well, first of all, they don't want to have sex anymore. And so we're like, well, why in the hell do they not want to have sex? And so then we get what? We get pissed off, we get frustrated, we get annoyed, and we lash out in anger. It's your fault. Which leads to question 2. Most of us don't think about this, which is, well, does my partner know why I feel the way I feel? How many times did you and I actually have conversations centered around how you felt?
Never.
Never. Now, mind you, we've been married, what are we on, year 19 now?
Yep.
What? 19 years? We've been together almost 23 years. 23 years. And for the first 15 or so, or maybe somewhere around 15, I never asked her why she felt the way she felt. What do you think I did? Well, I did what every man does, which is, you're not happy? Oh, well, I know why you're not happy.
You
It's
should
because
be
you don't-
happy.
Huh?
You should be happy. I gave you this, 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 this.
Exactly. Exactly. So I assume that she should be happy because why? Because I bought her things, because
I had a house. I had a car.
Yep. Took her on trips or paid for trips that I wouldn't even go on. Like all these things were going on. In my eyes, I'm like, man, I'm providing. I'm sacrificing for the family. I'm like the best husband ever. And again, I'd come home and like, there's no sex, there's no intimacy, she didn't even want to talk to me. My kids are like, yeah, whatever. Like, we don't need you, Dad. I'd be like, do you want to play? They're like, nah, not really.
No, because mom already did it.
Yep. Mom was taking care of everything. And so they knew where they needed to go to get engagement, and it wasn't with Dad. So the question, do I know the reason my partner feels the way that she does? The answer was no, because I never asked the question. So what would I do? I would start to tell myself stories in my head. Oh, well, she doesn't love me. Oh, well, she doesn't get me. Oh, she doesn't understand. Oh, well, she just wants more money, which would lead me what? Again, down this path of anger and frustration and all these things. Like I had zero idea what it was that she wanted and why it was that she wanted it. And so I would assume, and you guys all know what assume means. It'd make an ass out of you and me. And that's what I would do is assume, and just build up more anger and more frustration and more hatred towards what? Well, ultimately towards myself, because I didn't even understand what was going on. So let me ask you, what's changed in the way that we communicate? Actually, you know what? Let's hold that. I'm going to hold that till the end. By the way, I'm kind of like that sometimes. I actually want to hold this till the end and answer the way that we would answer those questions now. So the third question, do I know how my partner feels? Which we kind of answered, but I think I answered the second question wrong. Like, does she know how I feel?
Oh, I knew how you felt.
But did you know how I felt about the facts, or did you know how I felt about
No.
the facts that I wasn't getting what I thought I deserved?
The second part.
See, I was assuming that I deserved more intimacy. I deserved more connection. I deserved her loving me and telling me how awesome I was. And I got none of that. I got hey, how come you're not helping me? Or I had to find a babysitter for the kids because I had to go to work and you weren't here.
Oh, that happened a lot.
Or I had to go to work. Hey, you're going to miss the birthday party. You're going to miss the family gathering. You're going to do this.
That happened a lot too.
And so she didn't understand how I felt, and I didn't understand how she felt. Why? Because there's no communication. And so she would behave a certain way, and I would assume that, oh, she's behaving that way because she doesn't like me, because she's mad at me, because all of these things. And then that would cause me to behave in my own way, which is pull away, get angry, get pissed off, yell and scream, which I would do a lot, make the kids run and hide. Mm-hmm. And then I'll be like, well, how come nobody wants to hang out with me? Well, fine. Well, then I'm just going to go hang out at work, because at least at work they get me. Sound familiar? Okay. The fourth question, and this never came up. I can honestly say for me, I don't know about you. How can I change myself? Did that question ever pop into your head?
I would say about 2 or 3 months before you left.
So 2 or 3 months before I walked out. If you don't
And
know
that
our
was
story,
what, 14 years into our marriage.
I was like, I'm out. I'm done. You don't get me. You don't love me. You don't want to do anything with me. You don't want to have sex with me. You don't. And so, like, that was what my demeanor, that was what my questions became. That's like the entire way that I existed had now shifted into the blame game. It's your fault that I'm not happy. It's your fault that I'm not getting anything I want. It's your fault that I'm not making more money. It's your fault that I'm not getting promoted. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault.
Yeah. And then listening to other people, outside voices that continue to feed that story. And it just grew to the point it was ridiculous.
So here's the truth. You will always find what you're looking for. Remember that. You will always find what you're looking for. So if you're looking for unhappiness and hatred and anger in your relationship, you're going to find it. If you're looking for love, you'll find it. If you're looking for connection, you'll find it. If you're looking for intimacy, you'll find it. So at this point in our relationship, like nothing's working. My wife needed attention. She wasn't getting it. My kids needed attention. They weren't getting it. I wanted attention. I wasn't getting it. But at the ultimate foundation of this entire thing, it was me. I was the one that needed to change but wasn't willing to. So I would find fault. I would find reasons why I didn't need to change. Why it was her fault. Why it was the kid's fault. Most relationships, the partners don't accept responsibility. And I know you can relate to this. You leave the toilet seat up and then what? Well, it's not your fault that pee went everywhere. Or the dishes aren't done. Well, that's your wife's fault. Oh, the kids aren't up in time. Well, that's her fault too. Like there's this constant blame game that happens. And so if you're unable to answer this question, how can I change myself? Your relationship will never change. Your marriage will never change, which ultimately will lead what? To all the frustration, the anger, and everything else that happens in your life. Yep. You get distracted at work. You're unmotivated. You're not focused. And it's amazing how much your personal life bleeds over into your professional life. So the last question, and this is an interesting one. How long am I willing to wait? So let me ask you that. How long were you willing to wait for me to change?
Well, if you ask people, I waited way too long.
Say that again.
If you ask people, again, those stories outside, I waited way too long.
This is my wife talking. This is not me. Remember, I've been the asshole for 15 years. 15 years, 14, 15, around there. And demanded that she change, demanded that she improve, demanded that she do more around the house, demanded that she become a better wife, demanded that she become a better mother. Demand. And it didn't happen. So while I took this question the wrong way, which was how long am I willing to wait for you to change?
Yep.
And I was the one that said, hey, you know what? Well, this isn't working because you're not changing. And so what happened? Like, what exactly was I waiting for? I was waiting for me to change, but that wasn't going to happen. And so you think about the breaking point in a marriage. Like, what is that point that things ultimately like crash to the ground? What do you think that is?
It was literally, so you left in May of 14, and it was New Year's Eve of 14. And I remember we just got into a big fight. And I still waited 4 more months before I gave you an ultimatum.
So the crazy part is that there's always one party in a relationship that says, I'm fed up, I'm tired, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. But it's usually not the one that
it's causing the damage.
Exactly. It's the one that's causing damage is the one that says, I'm fed up. Right? Which in this case, again, like I was the one that was doing this. But the crazy part about a marriage is if you've been married for any period of time, and even if you haven't, you need to understand this. In order for a marriage to work, it takes work. This is like one of the most important life lessons that you'll ever learn. In order for a marriage to work, it takes work. So my wife and I had to figure out work, right? And it's not just me working. It wasn't just her working, but it was us working.
Yep.
So I want to go back through these questions and answer them where it is that we are right now. Now, mind you, we've spent the last 5 years figuring this whole thing out. Most of it through trial and error. But we figured it out. So where is it that we're at right now? Okay, question 1. Why do I feel unhappy? Is this a question that you answer now?
I know why you're unhappy. Sometimes I need to poke it out of you to get talking, but I know why before we even have that conversation.
Okay, and what about you?
What about me?
Do you know why you're unhappy?
Oh, definitely.
And is that based on fact, or is that based on feelings? Like, is that based on some type of sadness or anger or fear or frustration?
I would say it's 90% fact now and like 10% feeling.
But it always starts with a feeling, right?
Yep.
So here's the thing. Like, we talk about this all the time, is putting fact before feeling. It doesn't mean that feeling ever goes away, because it never does, right? But I want you to think about feeling as being one of two things. It's going to be a catalyst, like rocket fuel, that's going to propel you upwards, or it's going to be something that's going to burn everything to the ground, right? If you put a bunch of gasoline on a hillside with dry grass, what's going to happen? Woof, it's gone, right? So it can be destructive or it can be productive. I should write that down. That's a good one. It can be destructive or it can be productive. That's what feelings can be. But in most cases, they're destructive, not productive. Why? Because they're before the facts. So when Melissa feels sadness, anger, frustration, anger, what do?
I break it down into facts. And that normally, it's like, there's days when I wake up and I'm just instantly pissed. You open my eyes and I'm pissed. And I don't even know why. So I need to break that down, and that's exactly what I do. And if it comes on later in the day, it's the same thing. I sit in that for a few minutes, and then I break it down and get to the facts.
I'm going to tell you right now, there is nothing better that you can do in your life other than when you're feeling one of these negative emotions, anger, frustration, fear, sadness, when you're feeling one of these negative emotions, that you can't just take a few minutes, take a deep breath, and get down to the root cause. Like, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel unhappy? Why do I feel anger? Why do I feel frustration? Why do I feel guilt? And you'd be surprised, because most of the time it's based on a feeling. It's not based on fact.
Yep.
So again, what do Melissa and I both do now? We take that time every single day, and I can guarantee you it's every single day it needs to happen. We take that time to break it down and go, okay, why? Why do I feel this way? All right, question 2. Does my partner know why I feel the way I feel?
That's the one I hate. I'm like, sometimes you know way before I know how I feel.
Why do you think that is?
There's nothing wrong with it. It just drives me crazy. Because you know me so well now. Like, we honestly know who we are. Like, deep down, you know who we are. You knew who I am, and the same. And sometimes you're just able to identify it because I'm still lost in the feelings.
And this is what happens. We talk about always being in a position of tactical advantage, right? And think about this in a business. Like, you know your numbers in a business, right? You know, like your cost per lead, your cost per click, your acquisition cost, your customer cost, your overhead, your shrink, you know your KPIs, you know all this stuff when it comes to business. Why wouldn't you put yourself in a position of advantage in your relationship? And that's walking in and taking a second. Well, is the house a mess? Yeah, probably, but there's probably a reason why. Is your wife passed out on the couch? Is your kid sick? Like, what's going on? You got to be able to read this. Because ultimately, you understanding what it is that your partner's feeling is going to allow you to what? To have a conversation not based in anger or frustration, but one based in love and understanding. Ultimately, you want to come home and be able to connect. And if you don't understand why your partner is feeling the way they're feeling, it's not going to happen.
Nope.
And so instead of me coming home and being like, okay, where's dinner? Why is the house a mess? Why is this? Why is that? I can come in, I can have a brief conversation with her, with the kids, start to read things, and I understand that something's not going on right. She's got a headache. She doesn't feel good. She's sick. Her meeting ran over. This happened. This with the kids and whatever. And you start to read what's going on. Your reaction to what you see is not based on fact. It's not based on feeling anymore. And how do you think those conversations are going to end?
Well, yeah, because you can either fuel the emotion that's already messed up in the house, or you can totally help it change.
There you go. Now, again, we talk about this with question 3 as well. Do I know how my partner feels? But it's, again, the reverse. Does my partner know how I feel? And again, this is a two-way road. What I want you to see is in your relationship, it's very important that both sides are playing. Because again, I can walk into a room and read what's going on, but my wife also has to understand what it is that's going on with me. Because I'm part of this environment now. I'm part of this scenario. No longer is it just her. No longer is it just her and the kids. But now it's both of us. So how is it that we make this thing work? Well, I have to make sure that she understands the way that I feel. Again, based in fact, not based in feeling.
Well, because it's easy. Everyone knows how to read when your wife is pissed off, when your husband's pissed off. But can you read when they're just sitting on the couch and they look deflated? Like, are you able to break that down and know how they feel? There's a lot more emotion than just knowing when your spouse is pissed.
Exactly. And listen, man, this is going to be the most difficult thing if you're listening to this right now, is you being able to disconnect work and put yourself now at home. Because you can walk in like a zombie. I've done it plenty of times. You walk in like a zombie, still thinking about what? Work, still thinking about money, still thinking about the deal you didn't close, thinking about the new clients, thinking about, and completely ignore what's going on in front of you. But by ignoring what's in front of you, you're actually hurting yourself. You're hurting any chance you have of creating that happiness, right? And that connection that you're looking for in your marriage. You want your kids to think of you as something more than an ATM? You got to leave work at work. You got to be present at home. Question 4, and I think this one was the biggest one for each of us. It was for me, definitely. How can I change myself? What happened when you started asking yourself this question?
Well, I knew that I had a lot of pent-up anger that I had to deal with. And everyone has crap in their past, but it's learning how to let that go. And as women, we are amazing at remembering everything.
Like everything. She remembers what under I wore 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I won't even say that.
So women remember everything. I want you to understand this, man. Women remember everything. It's not a bad thing. It is what it is. We forget most things because if it doesn't have to do with money, food, or sex, odds are we're not going to remember it. But this is what I want you to see is how can I change myself, right? And so instead of going into this relationship saying my wife is the source of all of my problems, and then, of course, I'm never going to be happy because she's never actually going to do everything that I want her to do because, well, she's not me. I had to look at it as how I could change myself. What needed to change for me? Well, I needed to learn how to communicate.
Yep.
I need to learn how to pay more attention. I needed to learn how to be present. I needed to learn that, hey, although money is nice, money's not going to buy me time. It's not going to buy me connection. And it's definitely not going to buy me purpose. So when I started to change these things, our relationship started to change. How did it change?
And that's what happened is you started spending more time at home. And what men don't realize, it's not that, oh, I'm taking you out for dinner, now I definitely get to have sex. It's like you have to build it up. So it was spending time with me. It was spending time at night one-on-one with me, but it's also spending time with the kids. Like the more I saw him spending time with the kids individually and together, there's nothing more heartwarming to a mom than a dad playing with the kids and taking them out, taking them to the park. Like for me, I'm like, yeah, all right, you did all this. This is the stuff I love to see. Now I'll help you meet whatever needs you may have.
And by needs, you mean sex. Gentlemen, you want another shortcut to sex? Really simple. Take care of your wife, be present. Take care of your kids, be present. You will have sex. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
I will guarantee it. But see, I had to change myself. Instead of putting myself first, I had to say, okay, what is it that I can do in this specific time that I have to be present to her needs, to be present to the kids' needs, and what it is that they needed and they wanted in that period of time. Like, it doesn't mean 24 hours a day. I don't want you to think that, like, okay, now I'm going to be really present with my wife and kids and my business is going to burn to the ground, but that's okay because I'm present with my wife and kids. No, because women have two basic needs, right? Safety and security, right? And then what? And then, or those are the two basic needs. I misspoke. So they need safety and security. So you can provide one, the safety being there, and security, though, if you're not working, they're not going to have that.
Nope.
So you want to make sure that you provide both. But what investing in your family allows you to do is invest in your business. What would your day be like if you weren't constantly distracted by the fact that you just fought with your wife or the fact that your kid thinks you're an asshole? Like, what would your day be like? What would your day be like if you weren't distracted by the fact that you haven't had sex in 4 months? What would it be like? I want you to consider that the more in line your personal life is, the more money you're going to make. Period. Because all that anger, frustration, guilt, and shame is gone. You're able to focus on what it is that you need to focus on. Question 5, how long am I willing to wait? This is an interesting one.
So now it's shorter. That's the funny thing.
It is. It is shorter. So talk about that.
Because we worked on communication, because we worked on building a relationship together, because we worked on building a relationship with the kids, and because we were able to read each other's emotions so well, that we've gotten to a point where we are pretty brutally honest. And when you're pissed off, I tell you to go fix it. And you basically have about 15, 20 minutes to go fix it and come back, because there's absolutely no reason for you to still be in that situation, in that frame of mind.
In other words, we burn through the feelings quick and we get right to the facts. Because what we realized is, hey, everybody likes what happens after the fight, right? Which is usually sex. Let's not get sidetracked. But it's usually a closer connection. It's usually a relief, right? And so the quicker that you can get there, the quicker that you're going to get the end result, right? So you can sit there with the wedge and keep hammering it in and keep causing that divide and stay angry. Yeah, sure. Awesome. Enjoy that. Let's see how that works for you. Or you can get through those feelings quickly and get down to the facts. Like, my wife has become an expert. She's like ninja level at saying that, hey, go fix what you need to fix and come back when you're done. In other words, she knows that I got to process through those emotions quickly in order to come back and have an intelligent adult conversation about what's really going on and then how it is that we're going to solve it. So you all want to talk about saving your marriage. Well, it's really easy to save your marriage. You need to invest in 3 things. 3 things. 1 is yourself, 2 is your spouse, and 3 is your kids. If you can invest in these 3 things, your life will never be the same. Your business will never be the same. So you have to learn how to communicate. First with yourself, then with your spouse, and then with your kids. Now, it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. Some of you right now are going to race home and be like, hey, so let's talk. What's really going on? She's going to be like, you want the last 30 minutes? Or you want the last 10 years? Don't worry. It's coming, fellas.
And also, just because you took care of the kids for like half an hour does not mean that you're going to get anything out of your wife either. You got to build it up.
It's like a bank account. I know you guys have done this before. You like head over to the ATM. You're like, all right, here we go. It's like a scratcher ticket. You put in your card, doot, 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 doot. You put your code in and you're like, how much is in the bank account? Oh, just missed it. In other words, you're in the negatives. I know you guys have played this game because I have. So in order to withdraw money from a bank account, first it has to have money. In other words, you have to make deposits. It's the same thing in a relationship with your wife. It's the same thing with your kids. It's The same thing with your business. They're all the same. You have to invest first in order to get the returns, in order to be able to withdraw. So if you want a better relationship, well, it becomes very simple then, right? We talked about this. I'm going to repeat it again. Invest in yourself, invest in your wife, invest in your kids. Those three things. Now, we talked more specific about it, right? And I'm sure Melissa will come back on the show and we'll talk more about communication. But you have to understand that if you're unable to communicate clearly, it's not a bad thing. It just means you need more practice at it. Remember, Michael Jordan got cut from his freshman basketball team because he sucked at shooting. So how was it that he got better at shooting? Well, he just went out and shot. I guarantee you his first 1,000 or 2,000 or even 10,000 shots weren't that good. But eventually, he got really good at it. It's the same thing when it comes to communication and relationship. It's going to suck when you start. That doesn't mean you stop. You have to keep going. All right, any final words?
It literally comes down to not blaming your spouse for everything. If people would seriously take a moment to look at themselves before they blamed their spouse, holy crap, things would be totally different.
Take responsibility. That's huge. Take responsibility for where you're at and take responsibility for where it is that you want to go. All right, that is it for today. As always, you can reach out to me by email and we'll have a conversation. I'm more than willing to help you out with where it is that you're at, whatever question you may have. If you're ready to improve your life, to shift your marriage, to learn how to leverage your marriage in order to build a bigger business, in order to be a happier life or have a happier life, then go to thetacticalbusinessman.com. I got a program there for you that is meant to do that exact same thing. Work on you to help you get what you want out of life. All right, that's it for today. As always, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one.